The man was covered in blood as he staggered toward the prison door. He handed the gemstone in his hand to the imprisoned girl. This was a sacred relic of the temple that could turn back time. I stole it, try it, but my holy power is too weak. I can't activate it at all. Before he could finish speaking, the man collapsed heavily to the ground. Using his last bit of strength, he bid the girl farewell. I'm sorry, I couldn't fulfill our promise. His hand fell limply, and with it, extinguished the girl's last hope. Zashid, please don't leave me. The girl was so grief-stricken that she lost her voice. The last person in this world who was incomparably precious to her had also been killed by the temple. The girl once had 3 names. Before the age of 5 at the orphanage, she was called Rosie. After her holy power awakened, she was sent to the temple. Her name became Rosie Tryan. Tryan was the surname given to apprentices with meager magical power. There were countless children like her, until she turned 11. A man named Yulian Nate found her. The man claimed to be Rossi's older half-brother from the same mother. Their mother was the daughter of Count Nate. He had come today to take her back to the Nate Count's residence. I'm sorry it took so long to find you. I only just learned of your existence. From today on, you are Rosie Nate. The sudden appearance of an older brother left Rosie stunned. The Nate Count family was one of the wealthiest in the empire and had always stood in opposition to the temple. But at that time, Rosie didn't care about any of that. She only cared about one thing. She finally had family. Yulian pulled Rosie into his arms and made a solemn promise. My dear sister, you only need to grow up carefree. I will never let you suffer any harm like I did. And so, Rosie followed her brother back to the Count's residence and began living a life of luxury. Only later did she learn that her brother Yulian was an extraordinary person. It was said that aside from priests and mages, he was recognized as the strongest among ordinary people, and he was also the heir of the Nate family. As the younger sister most doted on by her brother, Rosie possessed unprecedented happiness, but that happiness did not last long. Just over a year after she returned to the Count's family, Yulian suddenly met with an accident and lost his memory. Not only did his personality change drastically, he also forgot that he had a sister and showed Rosie nothing but disdain. This girl is my sister? What kind of joke is that? This made Rosie clearly realize that between her and her strongest brother, there was an insurmountable gap. Because of Yulian's amnesia, the entire family fell into chaos. In order to stop being a burden, the self-abasing Rosie left the Count's residence and returned to the temple. It was this decision that she would regret for the rest of her life, because the Nate family had always been hostile to the temple. As soon as Rosie returned to the temple, she was locked in a laboratory and turned into a test subject, suffering torture for 10 years. During this time, Yulian died, and the Nate family also fell into ruin. This was all the temple's doing, and the imprisoned Rosie could do nothing until one day, Zashid, who had secretly infiltrated the temple, discovered the imprisoned Rosie. From then on, Zashid often came to see her, and they became friends. He was the only light in Rossi's sunless world. But now, even Zashid was dead. Rosie looked at the gemstone. Could this sacred relic really turn back time? But with her meager holy power, could she really do it? Recalling her brother and Zashid, who had been killed by the temple, Rossi's longing climbed to its peak. Please turn back time. If she were given one more chance, she would definitely change all of this, protect everyone, and completely destroy the temple. Suddenly, the gemstone burst forth with dazzling light. The radiance of holy power gathered from all around into the gemstone. As the magic circle unfolded, Rosie lost consciousness. Her soul seemed to be drawn by some force, passing through the intersection of past and future. Inside a luxurious castle, Rosie stared blankly at her younger self in the mirror. She had truly returned to the past. Looking at the familiar room and furnishings, Rosie confirmed that this was the annex of the Count's residence, and the date on the newspaper was exactly 10 years earlier, the very day her brother lost his memory, and she left the Count's residence. Rosie hadn't expected that she had truly succeeded, since she had already returned to 10 years ago. Then the most important thing now was to save her brother Yulian, because after losing his memory, he not only forgot his family, but also forgot the knowledge and abilities he once possessed, becoming a lawless troublemaker who understood nothing. Not only was his property completely divided up by relatives, he was later assassinated by killers sent by the temple. For a once favored son of heaven to end up in such a tragic state was simply too cruel. Now that her brother was still alive, Rosie swore she would protect him. The next goal was to meet Zashid. It was entirely thanks to his desperate rescue that she had the chance to be reborn. This time, she would definitely repay his kindness properly. Zashid was from the Duke of Daphner's household. His current situation should be very difficult. It was just that he didn't know her yet. Would he shut her out? Rossi's final goal was to protect the Nate Count's residence and take revenge on the temple. The temple had ruined her and killed everyone she cherished. This time, she absolutely could not let them succeed again. But to contend with the temple, she had to stop the Nate family from declining. Not long after Yulian's death, her grandfather, who had succeeded as Count Nate, also passed away. The family fell into the hands of incompetent relatives and ultimately declined completely, powerless to resist the temple. So she had to prevent the relatives from seizing control of the family. At that moment, the maid Heidi came to report. She told Rosie that young Master Julian had regained consciousness, but he was suffering from amnesia. His last memory stopped 7 years ago, when he was 17. She recalled that her brother had once said that he had been especially rebellious during his adolescence, a brainless brat with a violent temper. In other words, the brother now is not the sister-doting fanatic, but a lawless troublemaker. And now is precisely when those relatives were beginning to stir. Take me to see my brother at once. At this moment, Julian was a bit bewildered. Yesterday, he had still been the only son of a countryside butcher. Every day, he lived amid the quarrels of a gambling addict father and an alcoholic mother. It was said that his mother was a rich young lady and his father a servant of that family. After having an affair and conceiving him, the two fled their hometown to hide here. Later, his mother abandoned him while he was still young and left home. Perhaps because of his family background, Julian's adolescence was especially rebellious and violent. He was called the butcher's punk by the neighbors, who would have thought that after waking from sleep, he had become 24 years old. His mother was actually the daughter of Count Nate. Shulba, the adjutant of Count Nate, told him that since being taken back by the Count at 19 and inheriting the surname Nate, Julian Nate, you are to sucky. Within 5 years, Julian grew rapidly and became the strongest in various fields and was even chosen as the Count's heir. It was just that recently, due to injury, he had shown symptoms of amnesia. This is already the 15th time I've explained the situation to you, young master. Seeing a friend he had grown up with speak to him so respectfully made Julian feel uncomfortable all over, so he simply told him to act normal. But I am no longer your old neighborhood friend. I am your hired adjutant. If you still don't believe me, would you mind if I return to being 17 and speak to you bluntly like before? That was exactly what Julian wanted. He truly couldn't stand this awkwardness. Then I won't hold back. You blockhead. Why won't you believe it? I've repeated it 15 times. Can't you believe it just once? Big brother. If you weren't so badly injured, I'd really want to smack you with a stick. That's enough already. You butcher shop rat. Same old formula, same old taste. Looking at the injuries all over his body, Julian had no choice but to admit that all of this was real. At this moment, a maid announced, Miss Rosie has arrived. The adjutant panicked a little. He hadn't yet told Julian about Miss Rosie. Julian also looked confused. Who is Rosie? I already know what's going on. I want to see my brother. That single brother directly made Julian's brain crash. What do you mean? Since when did I suddenly get a younger sister? Because his memories were stuck at 7 years ago. So when facing this younger sister, who had only reunited with him a year ago, Julian's reaction was exceptionally cold. You got to be kidding me. This girl is my sister? In the previous life, that very sentence had cruelly stabbed Rossi's already insecure and sensitive heart. So she left the Count's estate and was eventually imprisoned by the temple. But this time, Rosie took the initiative to introduce herself to Julian. I am Rosie Nate, your half-sister born of the same mother. Brother, when you were 12, mother left home. In fact, it was because she was with another man and gave birth to me. Julian was dumbfounded after hearing this. What kind of person was their mother exactly? Clearly a noble, yet she eloped twice and bore children, abandoning everything. Absurd to the extreme. Which brainless bastard told you all this? How could they let a kid, like, you know, such filthy things? Of course you were the one who told me personally, brother. Julian fell silent. So the bastard was actually myself. But brother, it was you who brought me back and let me truly feel the love of family. You said you would always cherish me, love me, and take responsibility for me. Do you really not remember any of that? Faced with Rossi's straightforward words, Julian's mind turned completely into a mess. He couldn't help complaining. I can't even take care of myself right now, and suddenly there's a kid demanding I take responsibility. What the hell? Seeing the situation going south, the adjutant Shulba quickly covered Julian's mouth. Miss Rosie, please don't take it to heart. This guy isn't fully conscious yet. He's been talking nonsense. Seeing this, Rosie kindly reminded him, Shulba, covering your superior's mouth like that, given brother's personality, he definitely won't let you off. That's exactly why I have to cover it. Because once he regains his memory, he'll definitely blame me. Then when I cursed at my precious little sister back then, why didn't you tear my mouth apart? Then you would have gone a whole month without eating or drinking, suffering every day, muttering, I actually said such rude things to little Rosie. Julian only felt this was utterly ridiculous. How could I possibly be that kind of person? Looking at the three of them staring at him intently, Julian's patience was finally worn out. What exactly do you want me to do? I wake up and suddenly I'm a noble, or some kind of strongest person. Does that make any sense? I know nothing about life here. Can't I be scared? I don't care. I'm going back to the butcher shop. Seeing her brother throwing a tantrum in front of her, Rossi's heart ached unbearably. The former Julian had been strong and gentle, her support, and the pillar of the family. But now he was like a lost child, unable even to figure out who he was. The calmed down Julian felt a little embarrassed and was just about to speak when Rosie interrupted him. Brother, right now you really are empty-headed and know nothing. You look like a completely hopeless person. But the Count Nate's estate won't let someone like you live easily, especially now that grandfather isn't here. Rossi's words instantly changed Julian's expression. Seeing this, Rosie had the maid bring out the contract she had prepared earlier. Yulian Inate is willing to transfer all assets under his name to Rosie Inate. Yulian hadn't even reacted yet. Rosie had already stuffed the seal directly into his hand. Brother, please stamp it immediately. Yulian stood stunned for quite a while before coming back to his senses. Wait a minute, since when are you, this little brat, so greedy for money? Look at your clothes and jewelry. They're ridiculously expensive. You've already learned to throw money around at such a young age. But you were the one who gave me all of these, brother. Yulian hadn't expected that he had actually been so willing to spend money on his sister. He had originally planned to return to the countryside to continue running the butcher shop. Who would have thought he'd also have to take care of a sister who popped out of nowhere? Raising this little brat is way too expensive. How could he possibly afford it just by running a butcher business? Hey, brat, if I really plan to leave the count's estate and go back to the countryside, what are you going to do? Yulian stammered. Would you be willing to come with me? Rosie was silent for a moment. I will continue to stay at the count's estate. After all, only by supporting the family in this life could she save her brother. But Yulian was secretly calculating in his heart. Maybe it would be better if the two siblings just went their separate ways here. At this moment, Rosie once again urged Yulian to stamp the transfer agreement. Aren't you going back to the countryside? Then hurry and stamp it. Transfer all the property to me. After all, if I hadn't reminded you, you probably wouldn't even know you still had assets. Seeing Yulian still hesitating, Rosie deliberately provoked him. Or are you regretting it? So the punk from the butcher shop is this unreliable? Brother, I didn't expect you to be this kind of person. Faced with Rossie's questioning, Yulian instantly bristled. How could I possibly be that kind of person? He snatched the contract and stamped it directly, even injecting magic into it to ensure it had legal effect. Seeing the matter settled, Rosie let out a long breath of relief. Yulian helplessly reminded her, since you're my sister, I won't argue with you. In the future, spend money more sparingly. Don't splurge recklessly, understand? At the same time, he felt a little bitter inside. He had heard that before losing his memory, he had doted on this sister outrageously. Yet this little brat seemed to care only about money. Could it be that the so-called sibling bond was maintained entirely by me throwing money at it? Just then, a group of people suddenly barged in. They stuffed various documents into Yulian's hands and demanded that he handle them immediately. Talking over one another, they urged, "These are all urgent documents. Hurry and stamp them." Yulian looked at the documents in confusion. What is all this? I can't understand any of it. If you can't understand it, just stamp them first. Just hurry and stamp. Don't tell me you've even forgotten how to inject magic into the seal. Yulian felt his head splitting from all the noise. The adjutant Shulba wanted to step forward to stop them, but he was directly pushed aside. At that moment, he noticed Rosie holding the contract beside them. Shulba immediately had an idea. Everyone, don't waste your time. Just now, young Master Yulian has already transferred all his assets to Miss Rosie. The crowd gathered around to carefully examine the contract, and it was actually genuine. They immediately turned and rushed out. Why didn't you say so earlier? What a waste of time. He forgot everything, yet still remembers to dote on his sister. What a lunatic. Watching this group come quickly and leave just as quickly, the three of them were somewhat speechless. They've probably all gone to pledge allegiance to their new master now. Yulian looked puzzled. They're relatives who used to have their heir position taken by you. Brother, if you had stamped those documents just now, your property would all belong to them now. Only then did Yulian and Shulba suddenly realize, if Rosie hadn't urged him early on to transfer the assets out, he would have long been carved up clean by those relatives. This child wasn't greedy for money. She was protecting the assets in another way. But miss, those people will definitely keep pestering you. They'll harass you day and night. Can you withstand it? Rossi's tone was firm. That's still better than them harassing brother. Brother needs to recuperate now. Don't worry, I won't hand over the money. Yulian hadn't expected that this little girl, though young, was thinking about him in every way. Yulian solemnly thanked Rosie. He even generously stated that if she was willing, she could leave this place with him and return to the countryside to live. She could also leave this place with him and return to the countryside. Although there wouldn't be luxurious days, at least they wouldn't be entangled by those ill-intentioned relatives anymore. At least they wouldn't be entangled by those ill-intentioned relatives anymore. But Rosie advised him not to think about leaving. Grandfather loves you the most, brother. With him here, this is the safest place for you. This is the safest place for you. Thinking of that group just now who forced him to stamp documents with the seal. The seal. Yulian did not agree with Rossi's statement. Yulian did not agree with Rossi's statement, because here they only dared to use documents. If it were outside, they would be using knives. Yulian felt a chill run down his spine. Adjutant Shulba asked Rosie what she planned to do next. After all, young Miss Rosie looked like an easier target, and those relatives would surely stop at nothing. But Rosie was not flustered at all. Instead, she reassured Shulba in return. If reasoning failed, they would solve it with the power and influence of the wealthy. Yulian suddenly felt that Rosie was not as fragile as she appeared. She was calm and composed, her gaze firm, carrying a confidence beyond her years. Rosie told Yulian to get some good rest. Before leaving, she specifically reminded him, "You must remember, do not trust any of the relatives here. But don't worry too much either. I will protect you, brother." Yulian's heart was filled with mixed emotions. She was clearly still a child, yet she said she would protect him. He asked Shilba whether he and Rosie had been this close before. Yes, you doted on Miss very much. You even kept her hidden in a separate residence and cared for her meticulously. So Shilba was also very surprised after seeing Rossi's performance. Mrs. Judgment of the situation and her ability to predict future developments are astonishing, completely unlike a sheltered young lady ignorant of the world. Is that so? Then isn't that part of her very much like me? Facing Yulian's shameless self-praise, Shilba showed undisguised disdain but still patiently explained. Young master, you are more like a ferocious beast with a vile temperament, while Miss is a gentle and adorable little animal. Aside from both having silver hair and blue eyes, you give people completely different impressions. Yulian recalled the fleeting look of disappointment on Rossi's face just now. That child must be feeling very distressed. The person she regarded as her pillar of support had suddenly turned into a useless good-for-nothing. She even had to protect her brother in return. Transferring all the property to her could at least serve as some psychological comfort. Yulian asked Shilba approximately how much property he had. After all, as the heir to a count, he should have about 5,000 gold coins, right? Shilba wrote down an approximate figure in his notebook. Yulian only glanced at it once and was instantly petrified. 137 billion. Inside the Daphner ducal residence, two maids were whispering, I heard young Master Zashid has broken off his engagement again. Yes, it's already the 4th time. He could just follow the arrangements of the family elders, but despite his poor health, he's so stubborn and refuses every time. Zashid leaned against the side of a white wolf. He endured the pain in his body. He was already weakened to the extreme. Yet he was still comforting the white wolf, whose eyes were full of worry. It's all right. I can definitely hold on. I will never give up. The girl was the younger sister of the Count's heir. At this moment, however, she was being viciously bullied by a boy. Why are you still lingering in the Count's residence? Hurry up and get lost with your butcher brother. The boy's name was Loy, the only son of Rossi's eldest uncle. Originally, he thought he could become the family heir, but because of Rossi's brother Yulian's return, his fantasy was shattered. Seeing that Rosie did not react, Loy became even more aggressive. The Nate Count's residence despises the temple the most. You were never qualified to step into this estate from the very beginning. It turned out that Rossi's maternal grandfather, Caliban Nate, rose from nothing to become the richest man in the empire. He then used money and marriage alliances to obtain the title of count. However, in a past unknown to anyone, he had once fallen into slavery under the temple, and that experience filled him with deep-rooted hatred and hostility toward it. He regarded the destruction of the temple as his lifelong goal. When Yulian brought Rosie back to the residence, he had told her that her biological father was a low-ranking priest. She carried the priestly bloodline that her grandfather hated most, just a tiny bit of it. Rosie had therefore inherited a trace of holy power. Yulian placed Rosie in a separate residence, letting her have as little contact as possible with her grandfather and other relatives. After all, these relatives were all greedy and cunning, and Yulian himself had suffered quite a bit when he first returned to the estate. At that time, Yulian had sworn to protect Rosie and never let those people hurt her. But now Yulian was severely injured and had lost his memory. Having lost her protection, Rosie was immediately targeted by troublesome relatives. Your mother already ran away from the Count's residence long ago, and grandfather doesn't care for you. You temple lackey. Why don't you hurry up and pack your things and crawl back to the temple? If it were the insecure Rosie from her previous life, she could only endure the beatings and insults. But the current her would never be bullied like before. Loy's blows grew heavier and heavier, his raised palm about to land on Rossi's face. Rosie suddenly let out a scream and collapsed to the ground. Loy was a bit stunned. She fell just like that? Who knew that the next second, a group of people suddenly rushed over. It was the same 3 people who had just forced Yulian to stamp the document. They shifted their target to Rosie. Rosie slumped on the ground and weakly said, "Everyone, I'm feeling very dizzy right now. Let's talk in my room later. After all, with so much money, I truly can't handle it." Loy immediately caught the keyword. What money? At that moment, he saw the property transfer document that had fallen to the ground beside Rosie. When he picked it up and looked, he was so shocked that he fell flat onto his backside. 137 billion. All that property has been transferred to this girl? Rosie was very satisfied with Loy's reaction. Have you seen it clearly? What you just pushed away was someone who possesses 137 billion gold coins. Rossi's acting was flawless as she continued to play the victim. Grandfather isn't at home, so I originally wanted to entrust this money to eldest uncle for safekeeping. But judging by cousin's reaction just now, it seems I need to reconsider. She changed the subject. Cousin, when you just told me to return to the temple, was that eldest uncle's intention? Does he want me to donate all this money to the temple? Everyone present was dumbfounded. Loy furiously denied it. Rosie glanced at the expensive outfit Loy was wearing. What cousin is wearing is fiber that serves as an important source of income for the temple, isn't it? It seems cousin never hated the temple from the beginning. Otherwise, why would you wear clothes made of this kind of fiber? Rosie stepped closer and closer to the already dumbfounded Loy. Give it back. It seems you're not suitable to remain in the Nate family either. Rosie coldly warned Loy, Watch your words in the future. Even if I came from the temple and my mother is a troublemaker who ran away from home, I have never thought of myself as inferior to anyone. In her previous life, it was precisely because she was too insecure that she left her brother, eventually making a mistake she regretted for the rest of her life. She could not betray that love again. No matter her origin, no matter whether her brother could recover his memory, she would live proudly and properly. To protect her amnesiac brother, the girl had to repeatedly maneuver against her greedy and cunning relatives. However, Rosie knew very well that her status and influence were limited. Relying on herself alone, it would be difficult to sustain the situation in the long run. She placed her hope in her grandfather, the one person in the entire Count's residence most capable of protecting her brother, but at this moment, her grandfather was abroad negotiating business. In her previous life, as soon as he received news of Yulian's accident, he immediately set off back home, but halfway there, he encountered a sudden landslide and was trapped for a long time. By the time he finally returned to the estate, Yulian had already passed away. This time, no matter what, she had to get her grandfather back as soon as possible, and take this opportunity to win his trust and elevate her position within the family. Rossi's eyes were resolute. In the past, her brother needed only 5 years to become the strongest among humans. If he started learning again now, he would certainly be able to do it as well. As long as her brother completely took control of the Nate family, they would be able to stand side by side and destroy the temple, avenging their hatred. At this moment, Loy was enduring his father's towering rage. Melik glared at this disappointing son, gnashing his teeth in fury. "You useless thing, just to win a war of words. You lost such a huge sum of money. Over 100 billion gold coins. That girl said she was going to entrust it to us. All of it was ruined by this good-for-nothing son." Melik was irritated to the extreme. He urgently needed that enormous sum to fill the hole in his debts. He had to seize the money before his father returned. He ordered his servants to find ways to delay the Count's return, whether by cutting off bridges or staging accidents. If it could cause his father to meet with an accident, that would be even better. Because Yulian had transferred all the property to Rosie, Rosie naturally became entangled by the retainers. "This is the investment fee the young master promised before he lost his memory. Please sign it." Rosie said, "All right, but I'm not very literate. Please wait a moment." Rossi's reason for refusal left the retainers stunned on the spot. "I'm sorry, I didn't study much at the temple before, and there are too many characters I don't recognize." The retainers grew anxious and urged Rosie to just sign and stamp it directly. Of course, Rosie knew what they were plotting. She sneered and advised them not to keep rushing her, or she might panic, her hand might slip, and she might invest all the property in someone else. The retainers knew Rosie was not easy to fool. They had no choice but to leave in dejection. Rosie lowered her head and looked at the newspaper in her hand. It was reporting on Zashid's 4th broken engagement. Rosie carefully examined the melancholy-looking boy in the photograph. So this is what Zashid looked like when he was young? The empire had 4 ducal families, each able to command one of 4 divine beasts of water, fire, grass, and earth. And Zashid was the head of the Daphner family, which controlled the divine beast of fire. The family heads were born with immense magical power, and this abundant magic was meant to be absorbed by the divine beasts, yet in recent decades, the beast's strength had suddenly weakened. Because the divine beasts could no longer withstand the excess magic of their masters, the unvented magic clashed within their bodies, bringing them tremendous pain. It could originally be temporarily relieved with sedatives produced by the magic tower, but due to a shortage of raw materials, production of the sedatives had stopped. The Daphner family had no choice but to seek help from the temple, but the temple demanded the divine beast as the price. Despite Zashid's desperate attempts to stop it, he ultimately lost the divine beast. The temple confined the divine beast and Rosie together and conducted various experiments. Rosie encountered Zashid, who had sneaked into the temple to visit the divine beast. It was also thanks to Zashid that Rosie, who had been imprisoned all along, learned that she had already been in this dungeon for 7 years. From then on, whenever the spiritual power weakened on nights of the full moon, Zashid would come to the temple. During those 3 years, they talked a great deal. Zashid told her about the changes in the outside world, and the two of them also confided their own stories to each other. Over time, Rosie developed different feelings for Zashid. She fell in love with this gentle man. Although she never confessed, she could still sense it. Zashid felt the same way about her. It was not until Zashid risked his life to bring her the sacred relic that could turn back time that Rosie gained the chance to be reborn once more. Looking at Zashid, who was now in trouble, Rosie came up with a bold idea. In this life, she would repay his kindness, and his 4th broken engagement was the best opportunity. Rosie picked up her pen and wrote a long letter in one go. Rosie Nate of the Nate Count's household wishes to become engaged to the head of the Daphner ducal household. Zashid, in this life, let me be the one to find you. When the maid Heidi saw Rosie writing a letter, she was clearly stunned. "Miss, When did you learn to write? It turned out that Rosie had never been able to learn how to write before, no matter how many teachers Yulian hired for her. It was only with Zashid's patient help in her previous life that she finally learned. Rosie told Heidi to keep it a secret and explained that she had deliberately pretended to be illiterate to fool those relatives. Rosie took the engagement letter to find Yulian, but at the corner, she ran into Loy once again. Unexpectedly, Loy had completely lost his usual arrogance. He didn't say a single word and turned to leave. Rosie could tell at a glance that this brat must have been severely scolded by his father because of the last incident. The sun was already high in the sky, but Yulian was still fast asleep. Shilba saw Rosie and bowed respectfully. Shilba was Yulian's good friend and also his conscientious adjutant. Rosie recalled how her brother had once teased Shilba. Though stern and serious by nature, he had a particular fondness for cute things, but he was upright. To those he recognized, he would devote his full loyalty. He had always taken good care of Rosie as well. In her previous life, after her brother left the Count's estate, Shilba followed him all the way and ultimately sacrificed himself to protect him. Therefore, Rosie trusted Shilba deeply. Rosie asked him to fetch her brother's seal. She herself went to wake her brother. Brother, wake up, stamp this, and then you can go back to sleep. Hearing that he had to stamp something again, the bleary-eyed Yulian asked helplessly, what are you trying to take from me this time? There's nothing left to take, because you're already a perfect pauper, brother. At that moment, Yulian noticed the brooch Rosie was wearing and only found the style flashy and tasteless. Is that so? But this is the first brooch brother ever bought for me. Yulian was speechless. This mouth of mine should just stay shut. Rosie stuffed the engagement letter and the seal into her brother's hands and urged him to stamp it quickly. At that moment, Shilba noticed the contents of the letter. His voice suddenly rose sharply. Miss Rosie, are you joking? Seeing her brother obediently stamp it, Rosie replied, I'm serious. Shilba panicked. But miss, this is an engagement. Yulian instantly became fully awake. You actually dared to get engaged behind my back. No, you're not allowed to trick me into stamping this. Rosie patted his shoulder. Brother, just take this opportunity to remember the lesson well. Don't stamp things so casually in the future. Yulian felt it was absurd. The instigator was actually comforting him. Shilba felt doomed. Once Yulian regained his memory, he would surely kill him for helping fetch the seal. He looked at Rosie anxiously to confirm, an engagement is just a proposal. It doesn't necessarily mean it will succeed, right? Rosie answered calmly, it may not succeed indeed. After all, so many families have come to propose. Whether they'll even think highly of me is another matter. Yulian was completely confused. Rosie told him to rest well and that she would come again at lunchtime. Where are you coming for this time? Of course, because I miss you. Meanwhile, Rossi's grandfather, Count Caliban Nate, was galloping toward the vicinity of Soren City. An attendant comforted him. Don't worry. Perhaps young Master Yulian has already woken up. A travel-worn yet vigorous old man suddenly pulled hard on the reins. Of course, even if it were for his precious younger sister, he would certainly wake up. The girl carefully tended to her severely injured and amnesiac brother, but her brother kept tugging at Rossi's sleeve and staring at her. Yulian couldn't understand why, when they had only been apart for a few hours, this little rascal had changed into another outfit again. He asked Rosie why she suddenly wanted to get engaged. Rosie was too lazy to explain, which only made Yulian more displeased. He turned around and scolded his adjutant Shilba for helping fetch the seal, which was simply exasperating. Rosie looked at her suddenly bristling brother, feeling somewhat puzzled. Weren't you saying you were going back to our hometown alone? Since I don't care anymore, why should I still be angry? Yulian couldn't quite describe what he was feeling, even though he had already lost his memory. He had only met this suddenly appeared younger sister twice, yet he was inexplicably angry. It felt as if he rejected Rossi's engagement from the bottom of his heart. Shilba suddenly sensed something was wrong. The young master seemed to still retain the instinct of spoiling his sister and letting her do as she pleased. If he regains his memory, I might really be scolded to pieces. At the thought of his future predicament, for the first time, Shilba hoped that Yulian would not recover his memory. Yulian cautiously asked Rosie, was it very hard yesterday, facing the encirclement and obstruction from those vassals? After all, you're still such a young child, yet you suddenly took over assets worth hundreds of billions. Those greedy relatives will definitely not give up easily. He paused and suggested, how about you return the money to me? I'll keep it for you and give it back when you come of age. No. Rosie refused cleanly and decisively. Brother, when I was little in the orphanage, I heard this kind of thing. I'll keep the money for you and return it when you grow up. You must never believe that. If they add another sentence like, I'll use the money to invest and make a big profit, then you should run away immediately. Yulian felt helpless and had no choice but to drop the matter. Brother, I'm doing this for your own good. You should focus on studying now and make up for all the skills you've forgotten. When the time comes, I'll return the money to you. But Yulian, whose current mental age was only 17, was in his rebellious phase and had no interest in studying at all. Seeing him dejected, Rosie felt a little discouraged too, but she still encouraged him. All right, just give it a try. Maybe brother really is a genius. Filled with helplessness, Yulian could only agree then. I'll give it a try. There was no way around it. Who told him he was a soft-hearted brother. At this moment, Shulba reported some news. At the upcoming monthly meeting, the elders of the family planned to decide on the inheritance of that property on the spot. Rosie had long expected this. Those relatives had been eyeing the money greedily for a long time. Without their grandfather protecting Yulian, it would indeed be difficult to deal with them if they joined forces. After hearing this, Yulian looked displeased. That's clearly my money. On what grounds do they get to decide without permission? Rosie calmly told him not to worry and to focus on recovering from his injuries. And let me correct you. That's my money, not brother's. I will keep it safe. Rosie privately asked Shulba and learned that their grandfather had already arrived in Soren. And Soren's next stop was Tefan. In their previous life, their grandfather had encountered a landslide there, which delayed his journey. This time, they had to make their grandfather change his route and hurry back. Rosie took out a letter. She asked Shulba to deliver it to their grandfather immediately. Dear grandfather, this is Rosie. I would like to purchase something from you. On your way back, please make a bracelet out of seashells. No matter what price you set, I have prepared a reward that will satisfy you. I look forward to the day we meet. Shulba suddenly remembered. A seashell bracelet. Wasn't that the Count's very first business venture? That's right, so he definitely won't ignore my words. Shulba could not understand at all why Rosie wrote this letter. Rosie explained, it's precisely because people can't understand it that I wrote it this way. To make grandfather interested in me, I have to at least arouse his curiosity, don't I? Just wait and see, Shulba. I will definitely earn grandfather's approval. At the communication station in Soren, the Count was reading the letter sent by Shulba. The letter explained that Yulian was now awake, but his injuries were severe, and he was suffering from amnesia. At that moment, he noticed another letter. Upon hearing that it was from Rosie, the Count was somewhat surprised. What did this child, whom he had only met once, want with him? He recalled when Yulian had just brought Rosie home, he had guarded her in every possible way and would not let anyone in the family see her. Was he afraid that he would hurt her? The Count knew that the child carried the bloodline of the priests he despised. But after all, she was his granddaughter. He was not so unreasonable as that. The Count carefully read Rossi's letter. A moment later, he suddenly informed his attendants, changed the return route immediately. The attendants were shocked. Just because of a request from a granddaughter he had never spoken to, he was going to change the route? The Count said sternly, what request? This is a transaction. The principle I always follow in business is that no matter who the other party is, as long as the first approach is sincere enough, I will respond. Besides, Rosie has already prepared a reward that will satisfy me. How could I refuse? Set out for home immediately. Shulba stared blankly as Yulian held a sword and slowly walked toward him. Yulian's cold voice echoed in his ears. Shulba, you have truly disappointed me. You even brought out the seal to make me agree to Rossi's engagement. Absolutely unforgivable. Shulba hurried to explain, but Yulian drew his sword without another word, and the cold flash of the blade gleamed. Shulba suddenly opened his eyes. Thank goodness. Thank goodness, it was only a dream. As Yulian's most trusted adjutant, Shulba had always served him faithfully and conscientiously. He followed his instructions and satisfied all of Miss Rossi's requests. Yet he still could not understand why Rosie suddenly wanted to be engaged to the Duke of Daphner's family. The two families had had no prior contact at all. At that moment, he suddenly thought of the letter Rosie had written to the Count, in which she promised a reward that would satisfy him. Could it be that she wanted to use this marriage alliance to stabilize her position within the family and thus protect young Master Yulian? If the marriage alliance truly succeeded, the power of the Duke of Daphner's family would indeed become a bargaining chip the Count had always dreamed of. Although the Nate Count family and the Daphner Duke family were both noble houses, their ranks were worlds apart. For example, only the 4 great ducal families could attend the Grand Nobles' Council. For the Count, that was something within sight, yet forever out of reach. If Rosie could become engaged to the head of the Daphner family, the Count could attend the Grand Nobles' Council in place of the underage Daphner head. Moreover, the head of the Daphner family was in extremely poor condition due to magical power running out of control. According to the rules, when the family head was absent, the Nate family, as the engagement partner, would obtain greater authority. Thinking of this, Shulba was deeply moved. He had not expected that Miss Rosie, at such a young age, would make such a choice for the sake of young Master Yulian. He had always thought Rosie was a kind and innocent little girl, never imagining she could be so far-sighted, both courageous and resourceful. Shulba walked into the living room. He happened to see Yulian earnestly lecturing Rosie. It's only been a few hours since I saw you. Why have you changed into another outfit again? A person can't be judged by appearance alone. What matters most is inner substance. Rosie felt a little wronged and asked Yulian whether he had studied seriously. At the mention of this, Yulian instantly became smug. Kid, I might really be a genius. I understood everything just by casually flipping through the books. My talent is off the charts. In the future, if you don't understand something, come ask your genius brother. And the attending physician said my body is recovering at an unbelievable speed. Rossi's face lit up with joy after hearing this, and she obediently listened to her brother boasting. Shulba looked at the siblings with a gratified expression. Although Yulian appeared to find Rosie annoying on the surface, he had actually always secretly looked forward to her arrival. Before losing his memory, Yulian would always squeeze out time to have tea with Rosie, saying it was his greatest happiness. He even often made Rosie feel that her brother was far too clingy. If Yulian could recover his memory, just imagining the current scene would make him excited for an entire month. However, on the other side, Melik curled his lips into a sinister smile. He heard that his father might have encountered a landslide. Not only was he not worried, he was so excited that he repeatedly cheered. The road was cut off, communication was paralyzed, and his father couldn't return. He would definitely miss this month's meeting. Melik decided to seize this opportunity. He would take all of Yulian and Rossi's property into his own hands, and not only that, he would make them disappear completely. Even if his father returned, he would never find them. Every time the girl went to see her brother, she would dress up carefully. She would put on the clothes and jewelry her brother had given her. She repeated this over and over again, all just to make her amnesiac brother remember her. But Yulian's gaze remained unfamiliar, even carrying a trace of confusion. Seeing Rosie frequently changing clothes, he couldn't help but tease her. "Kid, are you trying to be a fashion icon? You care too much about appearances. What matters most in a person is inner substance." Seeing that her brother had no reaction at all, Rosie felt a wave of bitterness rise in her heart. It seemed this method wouldn't work either. She couldn't help but recall the days when she had just been brought back to the Count's residence. At that time, Yulian would gently tell her, "We both didn't have the fortune of having parents, so we must cherish each other and be each other's one and only support in this world." Back then, Rosie had been very naive and thought that her brother, being 12 years older than her, did not need her care at all. "Then I'll grow old 12 years earlier than you. When I'm old first, you have to push my wheelchair and keep me company often." Rosie didn't want her brother to say such inauspicious things, but Yulian smiled and comforted her. "Anyway, that day will come sooner or later. When the time comes, I'll be able to eat with our little Rosie every day." At that time, Yulian was always very busy. He could only squeeze out a tiny bit of time to accompany Rosie. Sometimes they would agree to have dinner together, but he would always break the appointment for various reasons. Rosie would often sit at the dining table, looking at the dishes gradually turning cold, her heart filled with disappointment. But now they could finally eat together every day, yet her brother no longer remembered her. Rosie once again recalled those days when she was learning to write. No matter how clumsy she was, Yulian patiently stayed by her side. "You're very smart. Take it slow. It's okay. I only started learning at 19 too." Yulian told Rosie not to feel pressured. "No matter what kind of little Rosie you are, I will always love you the same." Then does that include a little Rosie who still can't write even after 60 years of learning?" "Of course," Yulian replied without hesitation, his tone full of doting affection. "I promise. Even if you still can't write after 70 years of learning, your big brother will always love you and protect you." The memories surged like a tide. Rossi's vision gradually blurred. "But brother, I can now recognize every word, yet you don't remember anything anymore." She took a deep breath, forcing herself to pull together. "I can't give up, I have to persist." Brother once said, "No matter the circumstances, no matter what I become, he would always love me, and even if he stopped loving me, then I could just love him a little more." Rosie pulled open the drawer. Inside it was filled to the brim with jewelry Yulian had given her, each piece seeming to tell of his favoritism toward her. Even though she told him not to buy any more, he still enjoyed giving them tirelessly. "Which one should I wear tomorrow? There must be one that can make him remember something." Rosie suddenly felt that she might be too greedy. In fact, she was already grateful that her brother had escaped life-threatening danger and woken up. "As long as I can stay by brother's side, that's enough. It doesn't matter even if he doesn't remember me. But brother, I really miss you." Since being reborn, Rosie had borne all the pressure and pain by herself. But at this moment, she could no longer hold on. The emotions she had suppressed for so long completely erupted. She burst into loud sobs, her frail shoulders trembling nonstop, as if pouring out all her grievances and longing. Outside the door, Yulian sat quietly in his wheelchair. With complicated emotions, he gazed at the crying girl, silently watching the girl weeping inside the room. Yulian's heart was filled with mixed feelings. He had originally come to show off to Rosie that his body had recovered enough for him to sit in a wheelchair, but he had unexpectedly witnessed his sister's most vulnerable side. This sister, who appeared strong and capable of standing on her own, deep down, she longed immensely for the care of her older brother. However, Yulian didn't know how to face Rosie, so he chose to turn and leave. He had already lost all memories of his sister, so how could he comfort Rosie at this moment? After calming down, Rosie called for Shulba. She told him to convert all of Yulian's 137 billion in assets into cash, and on the day before the monthly meeting, invest all the money into magic crystals. Shulba felt troubled. "Miss, I understand that you would rather see the fortune vanish than let it be divided among the relatives. But the price of magic crystals is still plummeting continuously. They will never just stand by and watch this money be lost." Yet Rossi's attitude was exceptionally firm. Seeing the girl's serious and solemn expression, Shulba once again recalled Yulian's instructions before he lost his memory. "Whatever little Rosie wants, carry it out without question, and you must stand unconditionally on her side." He lowered his head and respectfully responded, I will carry out your orders. Rosie looked at the moon outside the window and silently prayed. I wonder if grandfather has received my letter? He must return before the monthly meeting. Days passed one by one. Rosie still accompanied Yulian for meals every day, and Yulian's body also recovered rapidly. He was already able to walk slowly with a cane. A week later, the Nate family's monthly meeting was held as scheduled, and all clan members gathered there. Looking at the empty seat of the family head, Melik secretly rejoiced. Father indeed didn't make it back. He had already discussed with his younger brother and sister, preparing to use the family's name to pressure Rosie into handing over the assets. As long as the plan went smoothly, they could divide the fortune equally, and then drive this bothersome pair of siblings out of the family. The door slowly opened. Rosie, dressed in a red gown, walked into the conference room. She introduced herself gracefully. I am Rosie Nate. This is my first time attending the meeting, and I look forward to your guidance. Her composure surprised Melik somewhat. Could this girl be pretending to be foolish to stall for time? No matter what tricks you play today, the outcome won't change. As the meeting began, Melik got straight to the point. He claimed that the assets Yulian had transferred to Rosie belonged to the entire family. To prevent Rosie from misusing them due to her young age, the money should first be kept and invested by the family elders and returned to Rosie when she comes of age. Listening to this high-sounding excuse, although Rosie had expected it, she was still stunned by their shamelessness. There's no need for trouble. I've already invested all 137 billion into magic crystals. Melik had yet to react. Their Aunt Monica beside him had already flown into a rage. Are you crazy? The price of magic crystals is falling every day. Not long ago, a massive Lam mine was discovered. Because Lam ore is cheaper and more useful than magic crystals, the magic crystal market had already collapsed. The three siblings were furious, cursing Rosie as an ignorant fool, saying that 137 billion had turned into a pile of worthless paper in the blink of an eye. Yet Rosie remained calm. I invested all the assets into what my brother intended to invest in. The project was magic crystals to begin with. What exactly are you angry about? It's not your money anyway. Melik finally could no longer restrain himself. He abruptly stood up and strode toward Rosie. He grabbed the girl by the shoulders, raising his arm to strike her. At this critical moment, a wooden block suddenly flew over. It hit Melik squarely on the head. He let out a miserable scream. Everyone turned in unison to look at the doorway. Under Rosie's shocked gaze, Yulian made a dashing entrance, leaning on his cane. He shook the slingshot in his hand, his tone icy. Sir, hitting such a small child, you really are a scoundrel. It turned out that just moments ago, because Yulian had not fully recovered from his injuries, he did not attend the monthly meeting. Instead, he was doing rehabilitation training with the doctor's help. However, the image of Rosie hiding in her room and crying kept lingering in his mind. The sister, who always smiled sweetly in front of him, cried so heartbreakingly when no one was watching. Was it because he had lost his memory and forgotten her that she was so sad? Shilba, meanwhile, wore a worried expression. At this moment, he was extremely concerned about Rosie attending the monthly meeting alone. He knew very well that those relatives coveting the assets would never easily let the young miss off. The count had not yet returned, and there was no one to support her. Moreover, if the news of the disastrous drop in magic crystal investments spread, the consequences would be unimaginable. Yulian also furrowed his brows. Ever since he lost his memory, Rosie had stayed by his side every day. At first, he only felt that he had an extra responsibility, but as time passed, Rosie's every smile and frown began to influence him little by little. Every time she called him brother, he felt the warmth and reliance of familial affection. Shilba, let's go. Shilba raised his head in surprise upon hearing this. I am also a member of the Nate family. I'm going to attend the monthly meeting. Amid the astonished gazes of the crowd, leaning on his cane, Yulian walked over to Rosie. He took Rosie's hand and led her back to their seats. He swept a cold glance over everyone. What are you all so worked up about? That's my money, not yours. Even if it's all lost, what does it have to do with you? It was the first time Melik had seen Yulian after his amnesia, and he felt a chill in his heart. How had someone who always valued etiquette become so unruly, even using a slingshot to hit him? He was just about to flare up when Yulian sternly shouted him down. Shielding Rosie, Yulian warned the crowd, from now on, if anyone wants to go crazy, come at me. Whoever dares touch my sister, I will never forgive. Yulian's icy gaze made everyone's hearts tremble, as if the him from before the amnesia had returned. At that moment, Monica suddenly spoke. I want to add another motion. Yulian asked Rosie in a low voice. Who is that vicious-looking woman? She's our aunt. Monica directly opened fire on Yulian. She accused him of bringing a weapon into the conference room without authorization, a serious violation of family principles. Not only that, you even used a weapon to attack an elder. With the slightest mishap, it could have caused serious injury. As soon as Melik heard this, he immediately chimed in. That's right. Rules are rules. If you break them, you must be punished. Why not go to the villa in the south to reflect for a month? Rosie panicked at once upon hearing this. In her previous life, her brother had been assassinated not long after leaving the Count's residence, leaving the estate under these circumstances. Who knew when something might happen again? Suddenly, Yulian grasped Rosie's hand. Though he said nothing, her tightly wound nerves instantly calmed. With her brother there, She feared nothing. Melik pushed his luck further, demanding that Rosie go as well. After all, you two are such loving siblings. Those family members who had long disliked Yulian also began to criticize him one after another. They demanded that he accept punishment. Melik looked smug. Since everyone agrees with this proposal, you two should obediently accept it. Faced with the crowd's coercion, Yulian and Rosie were momentarily isolated and helpless. Just then, the door was suddenly flung open. A familiar voice rang out. "You have truly disappointed me." Everyone turned around. The Count stormed in, his face filled with anger. The Nate family's long-standing ambition is the decline of the temple. We must always be prepared for dangers that may descend. And yet you make a fuss over a slingshot and even treat it as a weapon. Don't you feel ashamed? Melik stared in disbelief at his father, who was supposed to be trapped by a landslide. How could you have come back so quickly? The Count looked at him suspiciously. What? Were you hoping I wouldn't return? Melik hurriedly explained that he had not meant that. I came back by sea. Then his gaze fell on Rosie. He took a package from his coat and handed it to her. I accept your deal, Rosie. Thank you, grandfather. It was the shell bracelet Rosie had asked the Count to bring back. The shell bracelet had been the Count's very first business venture. Naturally, based on past experience, he would collect shells by sea. Thus, he bypassed the Teppan region where the landslide had occurred and returned early. Only then did the weight in Rossie's heart finally lift. She and Yulian were saved. The Count examined Rosie and spoke meaningfully. This bracelet cost me a great deal of precious time to make. What reward do you intend to give me? Rosie understood at once that her grandfather was indeed interested in the compensation she had offered. Now that the temple stood as the most influential force in the empire, not only above the royal family, but even beyond the power of the four great houses. Yet the Count regarded the temple as an enemy, and this opposition had always placed the family in danger. For the family's long-term prosperity, what the Count valued most was naturally his descendants' ability to handle crises. A few days ago, I submitted my proposal of engagement to the Duke of Daphne. If the alliance succeeds, it will surely be of great help to you, grandfather. Unexpectedly, the Count exploded on the spot. An engagement? You're actually getting engaged. Do I look like the kind of scum who trades his granddaughter's marriage? And you dare use that as compensation? If Yulian regains his memory, he'll go mad. Your brother dotes on you so much, and you're just selling yourself like this. Rosie had not expected him to be so furious. If you're not satisfied, I have other compensation. After all, she only needed to prove that she had the ability to deal with crises. Grandfather, after receiving my letter, you chose to travel by sea, avoided the landslide, and saved a great deal of time. As you said, your time is extremely precious. Doesn't that count as a reward sufficient to satisfy you? When one form of compensation fails, immediately present another according to the situation. Isn't that also a form of adaptability? After hearing this, the Count first smiled faintly. Then he burst into hearty laughter. Everyone present was stunned. The Count looked at Rosie, his eyes full of admiration. That Yulian fellow truly hides his depth well. Yulian was utterly confused, but Rosie was secretly delighted. Melik could no longer sit still and hurried forward to complain to the Count. He revealed Rossie's investment in magic crystals and how she had lost the entire 137 billion. Loy immediately seized the chance to add fuel to the fire. Grandpa, Rosie came from the temple. How can we trust her words? She must be a lackey sent by the temple. She deliberately lost our family's money to help them. Yulian couldn't help but snap in correction. The money isn't the family's, it's mine. I willingly gave it to my little one. Loy held up the small wooden pellet Yulian had shot with a slingshot. This could very well be a weapon provided by the temple. Yulian was utterly speechless. If this is the temple's level of weaponry, they'd have declined long ago. Rosie calmly watched as this group recklessly smeared them. She finally understood why her brother had always kept her so well hidden before. Faced with such a cunning and greedy group of relatives, she couldn't imagine how her brother, who had only returned to the Count's estate at 19, had endured it alone before he gained power and grew strong on his own. How much torment had he suffered? Thinking of this, Rosie became even more determined to secure her footing in the Count's estate. Grandfather, we have no connection with the temple. You'll understand once you see for yourself. Rosie raised her hand, signaling for Loy to step forward. She handed the wooden piece in his hand to her grandfather for inspection. Loy was somewhat bewildered and hesitated to step forward, but after Rosie mocked him as a coward, he immediately and eagerly brought the small wooden piece before the Count, fawning, "Grandpa, look, anything from the temple can't be trusted." However, before he could finish speaking, the Count suddenly grabbed his hand and sternly rebuked him. "You useless fool. And you still dare to strut in front of me." The boy had run over eagerly with the small wooden piece to complain, claiming it was evidence that Yulian and Rosie were colluding with the temple. Yet in the next second, he was scolded as a fool by the Count. "How dare you parade in front of me wearing clothes made of Aetion fiber? The one connected to the temple is you." Rosie coldly observed the scene, sneering inwardly. That complete idiot Loy. She had long warned him that her grandfather detested Aetion fiber, which was associated with the temple. Yet he still failed to restrain himself, with just a slight provocation from her. He became so carried away that he practically danced right up to her grandfather. Served him right for provoking her before. After calming down, the Count keenly realized that all of this had been deliberately orchestrated by Rosie. He could not help but look at this little granddaughter in a new light once again. With a grand wave of his hand, the Count announced on the spot, the proposal regarding the 137 billion in assets was hereby cancelled, and no one was allowed to bring it up again. This completely shattered the wishful thinking of Melot and the others. The Count informed Rosie that from now on, she would attend the main hall's breakfast meetings together with Julian. Rosie was overjoyed upon hearing this. It meant she had finally gained her grandfather's recognition. It also meant that she had officially become a member of the Nate family. When the meeting adjourned, Julian made an agreement with Rosie. From now on, let's attend every monthly meeting together. He couldn't bear to let Rosie, at such a young age, face that group of greedy relatives alone. My money can be used however the little rascal in our family wants, whether she loses it or gambles it away. What's that got to do with those people? But no gambling, okay? Otherwise you'll end up like your dad, big brother, who gambled away even the butcher shop. Julian was stunned. Rosie, how do you know that? Rosie, you told me all of that before. Julian felt a little embarrassed, not expecting that before losing his memory, he had shared everything with Rosie. After thinking for a long time, he cautiously spoke, I never understood what a harmonious family was supposed to be like. But since we're in similar situations, let's get along well from now on. We both lack the bond with our parents, so all we can do is cherish and support each other. Listening to these strangely familiar words, Rosie was overwhelmed with emotions for a moment. Even though Julian had lost his memory, he still protected her at critical moments. Although he was somewhat different from before, that affection had never changed. Rosie wiped away the tears at the corners of her eyes. She quickly ran toward Julian, who was waiting for her. From this moment on, she once again had a brother she could rely on. She was no longer fighting alone. Zashid leaned weakly against the chair. He coldly looked at the woman approaching him. What are you here for? As your aunt, of course I'm here to choose a new fiancé for you. Zashid's emotions suddenly flared. The magic power within his body instantly went berserk. Seeing him desperately endure the pain, the woman smiled even more smugly. My handsome nephew, you just announced your 4th broken engagement. As a result, a whole bunch of people have come proposing again. Auntie will pick a suitable marriage partner for you. You just need to behave and stop casually breaking off engagements. The woman's sharp nails dug into Zashid's chin as she threatened him viciously. According to the rules of the Daphner family, the engagement of an underage family head must be decided by the head's proxy and the elders, and in emergencies, the fiancé holds the same status as the family head. As Zashid's aunt, Elizabeth arranged engagement partners for him who were all adult women with children, and Zashid, tormented by the magic within his body, could hardly survive until adulthood. By then, she could push those children into the position of heir and control the entire family from behind the scenes. Although Zashid, as the family head, indeed had the right to break off engagements, Elizabeth had set enormous penalty fees in engagement contracts. Once an engagement was cancelled, the money would go straight into her pocket. Her ultimate goal was to seize control of the entire family. But Zashid would never let her succeed. Go ahead and arrange a 5th, 6th, or 7th engagement. I'll cancel them one by one. I will never let Daphner fall into your hands, even if it means I become the last family head. Unfortunately, his body, long tormented by demonic energy, was already too weak to endure. He could only silently endure his aunt's beatings and abuse. You look so arrogant, just like your short-lived father. You might as well die early. The woman coldly threw down these words and turned to leave. Trembling, Zashid gritted his teeth and tried to get up. Trembling, he could not give up. Trembling, he still had to protect the family and the divine beast. In this household, no one could be trusted. He could only rely on himself. Looking at the photos of his deceased parents, Zashid revealed a rare trace of vulnerability. Dad, Mom, I really miss you. Rosie walked out of the meeting room. All along the way, she kept thinking about her grandfather opposing her engagement with the Duke of Daphner's family. But time was pressing. Besides her, there were probably many others going to propose marriage. Zashid's parents had died early, and he became the family head at a young age. Yet his aunt, who held real power, used his marriage as a bargaining chip for personal gain. Rosie felt anxious, wishing she could immediately go rescue Zashid. But the chips in her hand were still far from enough. Zashid, hold on a little longer. I'll come find you very soon. At that moment, a burst of commotion interrupted her thoughts. She saw Loy loudly berating a boy. You useless thing. You've really disappointed me. You just stood there like an idiot without saying a word. That's why things turned out like this. Julian asked Rosie who that was. Rosie immediately explained to him. Melik, Philid, Valia, Monica, their grandfather had 4 children in total. The eldest Uncle Melik, the second Uncle Philid, their mother Valia, and their Aunt Monica. The one doing the scolding was the eldest uncle's son, Loy. The one being scolded was the second uncle's son, Idan. Loy's voice grew louder and louder. cursing both Yulian and Rosie as well. He even accused Idon of having failed to take the slingshot punishment on behalf of his father. Otherwise, perhaps Yulian would have been punished. As he spoke, he actually started hitting him. Seeing Idon silently endure the beating without a word, Rosie guessed he must have been bullied often. At this moment, she suddenly noticed that something seemed off about Yulian's mood. With the mental age of 17, Yulian was in the passionate prime of youth. Encountering such outrageous bullying of the weak made his sense of justice skyrocket. He practically wanted to rush up and take the guy down on the spot. Rossi's heart sank, and she quickly told Yulian to calm down, saying she would handle this matter. She first set aside the shell bracelet in her hand. In one swift step, she stood in front of Idon. "If you're dissatisfied, vent it on yourself. Stop bullying innocent people." Loy was slightly stunned, not believing he had done anything wrong at all. "What bullying? We're just playing around. This is a place where only the strong survive." "Idon, you tell me yourself. Am I bullying you or am I playing with you?" The previously silent Idon finally raised his head. "If I say something, you won't get angry, right?" He showed not the slightest fear. Instead, his composure was almost abnormal. That utterly indifferent look instantly set Loy off. Rosie quickly stopped him. "Didn't you just say only the strong survive? Then how about having some fun with my brother?" Seeing Yulian, shrouded in a chilling aura, walking toward him step by step, Loy chickened out instantly. He stammered a few harsh words, then ran off in disgrace. Rosie looked at her brother, immensely pleased. As expected of the man whom their grandfather bypassed his own children to directly designate as heir, she turned to look at Idon, thinking he would also admire Yulian. But Idon simply thanked them in a flat tone. Sure enough, violence must be met with violence, though it doesn't cure the root. It is indeed the most effective method for now. Rosie looked at Idon, whose defining trait seemed to be emotional stability. Sure enough, this child was a little abnormal. According to memories from her previous life, Rosie knew that although the Idon before her was just a thin, easily bullied boy, it wouldn't be long before he would become the strongest archmage in the Empire's history, Idon Nate. Yet in childhood, he had been the most overlooked child in the family. His mother died after giving birth to him. His father was promiscuous and rarely stayed home. The lonely Idon locked himself in his room, becoming an oddball who only loved reading magic books. Every so often, he also had to endure bullying from his cousin Loy. Over time, Idon grew more and more silent, and his personality increasingly eccentric. Finally, at 15, he left the Count's estate and went to the Magic Tower. There, he displayed astonishing magical talent. In just a few short years, he became the most outstanding archmage in the Empire. Ever since entering the Magic Tower, Idon had cut off contact with his family and never cared about the affairs of the Count Nate's household again. Although Rosie was not close to Idon, she still couldn't bear to see him being bullied, so she asked whether he was often beaten and scolded by Loy. Idon looked indifferent. "It's always been like this since I was little. Everyone knows, except grandfather." Rosie was a little surprised. "Does brother Yulian know too?" "Of course he knows. No matter how badly I was beaten, that person never cared." Idon's tone remained calm. "The last time Loy beat me until I was covered in injuries, he didn't even spare me a glance. He just whistled and walked away, holding the gift he was going to give you." Now, not only Rosie, but even Yulian himself found it hard to believe. Was his pre-amnesia self really that cold? Idon rarely looked so serious. Yulian Nate was originally a scumbag who only cared about his sister. What could one possibly expect from such a cold-blooded man who stepped on others to rise to power and become the heir? After arriving here and suffering malicious treatment from his relatives, in order to defeat demons, he embarked on a path even more terrifying than the demons. But then Idon changed the subject. "I heard that after losing his memory, he turned into a rebellious teenager, and his character seems to have improved somewhat." Rosie hadn't expected that the Yulian she saw as flawless could have been so terrible in the past. After some analysis, Idon reached a conclusion. It seemed that Yulian had exchanged his memory loss for the possibility of becoming a better person. At that moment, Idon seemed to notice something and pointed toward the ground, not far away. For the first time, he showed a flustered expression. "Rosie, something seems to have happened over there." The shell bracelet the Count had given Rosie was shattered all over the ground at some unknown time. Rosie hurried over to check. She had deliberately placed it aside to prevent it from getting bumped. How could it have suddenly broken? Idon looked uneasy. Grandfather made this with great care. How could it break so quickly? He might think Rosie was too careless and ruined it. Rosie understood what he meant. If grandfather finds out, he'll definitely be unhappy. Idon felt a bit guilty. "It's all because of me that things turned out this way. But wasn't it that guy Loy who did it? He's the only one capable of doing something so despicable." Yulian's words reminded Rosie. Thinking back to the direction Loy had left in, he indeed would have passed by here. If he really was the culprit, he would definitely run to grandfather and add fuel to the fire, making the situation worse and deepening the misunderstanding. But there was no evidence now. He might even bite back and claim that I broke it myself, then shift the blame onto him. Yulian told Rosie not to worry. "That guy hasn't gone far. If we catch him and beat him up, he'll definitely confess everything." Rosie was somewhat speechless. What kind of hooligan-style solution is that? Yulian lifted his foot, ready to give chase. But Idon stopped him. That's the backyard. Uncle Melik goes there to drink and go crazy whenever he's upset. He's probably there today too, so Loy would never go there to make trouble for himself. Yulian came up with another idea. Melik is the one who tried to hit Rosie just now, right? Why don't we beat him up too to vent our anger? Rosie reached out and grabbed Yulian's cane. Brother, don't do something absurd like beating up your uncle. I've already thought of a good plan. Rosie walked calmly to Idon and comforted him. Don't blame yourself. The one who did wrong was someone else. What we need to do is repay them double. Just look forward to tomorrow's breakfast gathering. Early the next morning, Rosie got up very early to wash and dress up. It was her first time attending the breakfast gathering as a family member, so of course, she had to be fully prepared. But as soon as she stepped out, she saw Idon already waiting there. Rosie was a little surprised. You're going with me too? Idon extended his hand toward Rosie, smiling meaningfully. Starting from yesterday, we're on the same boat. Loy doesn't dare act recklessly in front of Yulian. And if I'm with you, and you're with Yulian, then he won't dare bully me casually. Rosie was puzzled. Then why don't you just stay by brother Yulian's side? No. Yulian's emotions fluctuate a lot right now, and he has a strong sense of self. Staying with a hot-tempered, rebellious teenager like that is mentally exhausting. He paused, then added, of course, I chose to stay by your side not because you were the first to help me, nor because you're very cute and charming when you smile, nor because you're clever when plotting against others, or amusing when teasing people. Rosie was amused by him. I understand. Then you can stay by my side from now on. The sight of the girl smiling sweetly made Idon blush instantly. As they walked, the two discussed their plan. They decided to put on a good show at the breakfast gathering. It was the girl's first time having breakfast with the entire family. She stayed tense throughout, fully alert, constantly on guard against malicious relatives setting traps. At that moment, the Count suddenly began settling accounts. He called out his 3 children one by one and criticized them. One had carelessly fallen into a trap and used business funds to plug loopholes. One had expanded business recklessly, letting debt snowball. Another had gone crazy buying jewelry, directly driving the business into bankruptcy. The Count gritted his teeth in anger. If you have no brains, don't be greedy. If you have no ability, don't indulge in luxury. The 3 of you restore everything to how it was immediately. Only then did Rosie understand why grandfather had designated Yulian as the heir. His 3 children were experts at squandering the family fortune. But Melik was still unwilling to give up and asked the Count, after Yulian was injured and lost his memory, what about the position of heir? You're asking me what to do? With the way you are, none of you can possibly become the heir. If you want recognition, show me real capability. The Count sighed helplessly. Why is every one of you so unreliable? At that moment, the Count suddenly looked at Rosie. With a kindly expression, he told her to move into the main building. He even arranged for her to stay in the Flora room, second only to the Count's own room. It was also the room where Rossi's mother had once lived. Rosie gladly accepted and happily thanked her grandfather for the arrangement. At that moment, Loy, who had been silent all along, suddenly spoke up. Rosie, why aren't you wearing the bracelet Grandpa gave you yesterday? I thought you valued it a lot. Rosie instantly understood. So, it really was you who deliberately broke the bracelet. Melik fanned the flames from the side. Don't tell me you broke it so quickly. That was handmade by your grandfather. How could you be so careless? Rosie was just about to explain, but the Count spoke up to defuse the situation. It's just a bracelet. I'm not someone who nitpicks over such things. However, Melik refused to let it go. Father, that wasn't an ordinary bracelet. She dared to destroy the first thing you bestowed upon her. By rights, she should be confined for a few days. Rosie asked in return, are you really going to do that? At that moment, Rosie suddenly put on an innocent expression. But uncle, don't you remember what happened yesterday? Melik looked baffled. What do you mean? Rosie seemed troubled. I originally didn't want to bring it up again, but since uncle insists, grandfather, the shell bracelet you gave me is indeed broken. Because yesterday in the backyard, I ran into Uncle drunk. He snatched my bracelet and stomped on it hard. The bracelet was crushed on the spot. Melik exploded upon hearing this. He pointed at Rosie and cursed viciously. Impossible. How dare you frame me? Father, she's lying. She must have learned this bad habit at the temple. I can testify. Idon suddenly raised his hand timidly. I saw it with my own eyes. It was Uncle Melik, drunk, who stomped that bracelet to pieces. Idon vividly described what happened yesterday. Rosie has been living in the side residence and didn't know that Uncle Melik likes to drink in the backyard. If I hadn't stepped in to save her, Rosie would have been beaten by Uncle. And after Rosie was rescued, to show her gratitude, she said that from now on, I would be her favorite brother. Rosie and Yulian were instantly speechless. That part wasn't in the script we discussed. Don't add scenes on the fly. Melik cursed furiously in anger. Just because I was drunk yesterday and don't remember, you dare to frame me like this? If it's a frame up or not, then investigate. Check the backyard lawn and see if there are any marks on the soles of shoes. Seeing Rosie so confident, Melik suddenly felt guilty. Could it really have been me who crushed it? The Count ordered people to investigate. Rosie secretly rejoiced. He finally took the bait. It turned out that yesterday Rosie and Idon had sneaked into the backyard. Sure enough, They saw the drunken Melik there. They scattered the bracelet fragments over that patch of grass. The tipsy Melik indeed stepped right on them. The attendant soon returned to report. Sure enough, shell fragments were found on the backyard ground and on the soles of his shoes. Now that both witness testimony and physical evidence were complete, no matter how much Melik tried to argue, he couldn't explain himself. Furious and exasperated, he accused Rosie of deliberately framing him. Rosie, however, said he was suffering from paranoia. In fact, if Loy hadn't brought it up first, I wouldn't have wanted to mention it again at all. This time, he had truly shot himself in the foot. If you've got nothing better to do, don't come provoking me. You can't beat me. Watching this farce, the Earl felt nothing but embarrassment and punished Melik with a week of confinement for reflection. Melik couldn't believe it. Was his father really going to punish him over a bracelet? The Earl looked deeply disappointed. I'm not punishing you because of the bracelet, but because of this pathetic display of yours. If there's a next time, you'll never be allowed to drink again. That finally made Melik completely quiet down. At that moment, the Earl suddenly informed Rosie to meet him in the study at lunchtime. Last night, news came from the Duke of Daphne's residence. You've been included on their shortlist of engagement candidates. The sudden news filled Rosie with ecstasy. She was finally going to see Zashid. Unexpectedly, her malicious eldest uncle was the first to jump out in opposition. He mocked that the Duke of Daphne's family had long declined, and that forming a marriage alliance with them would bring no benefit to their own family. Hearing this, the Earl flew into a rage. Do you think I'm negotiating a business deal? For so-called benefits, you want my 12-year-old granddaughter to get engaged? The second uncle, Philid, also tried to persuade the Earl. If we join forces with the Daphne family to counterbalance the temple, the cost is simply too great. Rosie still carried the temple's bloodline. Involving her might not be appropriate. The Earl let out a cold laugh. Doesn't Rosie also carry my bloodline? What I despise is the temple, not this innocent child. From now on, no one is allowed to discriminate against Rosie because of her bloodline. Rosie was slightly stunned. She hadn't expected her grandfather to protect her like this. However, Aunt Monica immediately interjected. She said Rosie was too young and not mature enough in handling matters. If they rushed into an engagement and made her identity public now, it would likely fail to convince others. Monica sneered, just because Julien casually mentioned before losing his memory that he wanted to invest in magic crystals. She poured all her assets into it. She lost 137 billion for nothing, a foolish girl with no common sense and no understanding of investment. How could she possibly be worthy of an engagement with the Duke of Daphne's family? The mismatch in status would only make them a laughingstock. Monica kept rambling on, belittling Rosie, completely unaware that everyone else's attention had been drawn to the newspaper that had just been delivered. Seeing that no one was paying her any attention, Monica finally sensed that something was wrong. The headline read clearly, "Law Mine Development Fails." Output was only 1% of expectations. The price of magic crystals began to skyrocket. The 137 billion Rosie had invested back, then had now multiplied dozens of times in returns. At the breakfast meeting, discussing the contents of the newspaper had always been a tradition of the Earl of Nate's household. The Earl would use it to test the insight and judgment of family members. In the past, even Julien would secretly complain to Rosie about it. Every breakfast meeting was so nerve-wracking that people could hardly eat. But at this moment, Julien looked at the newspaper and grinned from ear to ear. I'm really a genius. To have predicted the surge in magic crystal prices so early, this damn talent of mine. I don't even know what to do with it. Rosie felt somewhat helpless. She had claimed it was Julien who wanted to invest in magic crystals to avoid arousing suspicion, yet he had actually believed it. Julien made no effort to hide his pride. Ignoring the gloomy expressions of the others, he showed off wildly. I'm this outstanding. Of course you can't keep me in check. Why are none of you talking now? Weren't you pointing fingers at my kid just a moment ago? Come on, say something. Julien, stay behind after breakfast. The Earl's icy tone finally silenced Julien. Judging by your crude table manners, I need to personally confirm just how much of your memory you've lost. Faced with the Earl's reprimand, Julien instantly cowered, while Rosie was filled with joy. She finally had money. She could finally go save Zashid. She handed a property plan to Shulba, asking him to handle the profits gained from the magic crystal investment. Of it, 150 billion would be returned to Julien. At the same time, she also asked Shulba to deliver a letter to the master of the magic tower, requesting him to properly manage another portion of the assets. The remaining funds would require a series of complex operations. There were many matters to deal with, so she entrusted them to him. Miss, you're too polite. I was just worrying about having nothing to do lately. Ever since young Master Julien lost his memory, I've had quite a bit of free time. I'm even considering whether to submit my resignation next month. Rosie was dumbfounded upon hearing this. You're resigning? Because the work had become too leisurely. This man had actually begun to consider quitting. A relaxed and easy life doesn't suit me. Only by striving hard in busyness do I feel happy. Rosie was stunned. What kind of heaven-sent workaholic mindset is that? Rosie tried to persuade Shulba to stay, but he firmly refused. This was an agreement between Julien and me. When he first returned to the Earl's residence, he had no one trustworthy by his side, so he asked me to serve as his adjutant. Once he became mature enough, we would return to being just friends. Rosie pondered. Then what if my brother regains his memory and invites you to work together again? I refuse. Shilpa couldn't help but complain frantically. If he regains his memory, he'll definitely kill me over the matter of stamping the engagement documents. So, Miss Rosie, by assigning me so much work, you've allowed me to feel long-lost happiness. If there's anything else you need, please feel free to instruct me at any time. Seeing that Shilpa was determined to leave, Rosie suddenly had an idea. After you resign, may I recommend a new job for you? Soon it was lunchtime, and Rosie followed her grandfather's arrangement to the study. From the attendants, she learned that her grandfather's conversation with Yulian had lasted from morning until now. Rosie felt greatly relieved. It seemed the grandfather and grandson were getting along well, but their faces were dark and the atmosphere was tense. It was obvious they had been arguing fiercely. Sure enough, grandfather really didn't like the rebellious teenage Yulian. Upon seeing Rosie, the Earl immediately put on a kind expression and beckoned her over. Yulian was unwilling to be outdone. The kids here, walking all the way here on those short little legs must have been tough, huh? Rosie was completely bewildered by this sudden enthusiasm. Come, sit next to me. The two of them patted the seats beside them at the same time. Yulian seized the initiative. Rosie is sitting next to me. My table manners still aren't good enough. I need her guidance. The Earl sneered. If you forget your manners so quickly after learning them, then you might as well just eat however you like. Neither was willing to yield, and their quarrel gave Rosie a headache. At this moment, the Earl played his trump card. Sit next to me. I've brought you a gift. As soon as she heard there was a gift, Rosie immediately walked toward the Count. I'm sorry, brother. I hope you understand that some things can't be solved just because we're close. The Count took out a string of expensive pearl necklace and gave it to Rosie. Rosie's eyes instantly lit up. If you're giving a gift, at the very least it should be pearls. What's the point of seashells? The Count, generous and wealthy, took the opportunity to teach Rosie to strive for things of greater value. But I really liked that seashell bracelet. It's a pity it got broken. The Count told her not to mind it. It wasn't anything valuable to begin with, and I wasn't interested anyway. Rosie suddenly realized something. I was actually planning to give you a bracelet I made myself in return. Since you're not interested, then there's no need. The Count was suddenly at a loss for words. Why are you such a ruthless child? If something should be given, it should still be given. I'm sorry, grandfather. I'll try harder in the future to understand what you really mean. At the dinner table, the Count proposed arranging tutors for Yulian in various subjects so that he could receive a basic education. He also comforted him, telling him not to rush and to take everything slowly. The Count was still quite tolerant of this good-for-nothing brat who knew nothing at the moment. Yulian, however, looked confident. I'm not in a hurry at all. After all, I don't know anything right now, but just relying on my talent, I predicted the surge in magic crystal prices. I'll definitely be even more impressive in the future. Rosie couldn't help but press her hand to her forehead. Tone it down, my silly brother. The Count was clearly angered by Yulian's arrogance as well. You're still far from good enough. Let me ask you, why did you stamp the engagement document? Are you crazy? When you recover your memory, will you chop off the hand that stamped it yourself? Seeing this, Rosie quickly explained, it's not my brother's fault. I stamped it while he wasn't fully awake. Yulian, however, looked serious. Rosie clearly got engaged to the Duke's family in order to gain your approval. The atmosphere became tense again, and it seemed the two were about to start arguing once more. Rosie hurriedly stopped them. I truly want to get engaged to Duke Daphner. I've made up my mind about him. When I come of age, I will definitely marry him. The two of them immediately sprang up after hearing this. They couldn't understand why Rosie wanted to get engaged to someone she had never even met. The Duke's family fortune has already been seized by relatives. They're not even as wealthy as our family now. Brat, even if I've lost my memory, I'm still a genius. If you're looking for someone to rely on, you can wait for me. I'll definitely protect you. Rosie had no way to explain. She couldn't exactly tell them about her life before transmigrating, so that left only one reason. I saw his photo in the newspaper before. I thought he was too handsome, so I won't marry anyone but him. I must have him. The Count and Yulian were struck as if by lightning. They both tried to persuade Rosie to give up the idea, but not only did Rosie refuse to listen, she even insisted on visiting the Duke Daphner's residence to see Zashid. After finishing her preparations, Rosie was ready to set off. Yulian chased her all the way to the carriage, shouting that he wanted to go meet that boy as well. Rosie refused him on the grounds that he still had lessons to attend. Yulian tried desperately to persuade her to stay. Don't you like handsome guys? Just look at your brother. I'm good enough too. Rosie patted him as consolation. After reading the books you and grandfather gave me, I was deeply inspired. We should be children who value inner qualities. I've decided to work hard to overcome the harm of looks are justice and become a child who values inner qualities. Yulian was rendered speechless and could only watch as Rosie boarded the carriage. Goodbye, brother. I'm going to win over a handsome man. Yulian limped after the carriage, shouting, Brat, be rational. That guy probably just looks good in photos. On the carriage heading out, Rosie asked Shilpa, who was accompanying her, did my brother approve your resignation? Yulian not only gladly accepted it, He was even happy to return to their former friendship. The matter you instructed has also been handled properly. Everything is proceeding according to plan. While Rosie was talking with Shulba, Idon at the side was holding a notebook and writing rapidly. Entrusted by Yulian, he was monitoring Rossi's every move and recording everything to report back. Rosie simply let him be. 9:01 a.m. Operation exposed, but not reprimanded. So continued recording. When the group arrived at Duke Daphner's residence, the butler had already received the news and came to greet them. He asked Rosie to wait outside because the acting head of the family and the elders were in a meeting, deciding on Zashid's engagement candidate. As for Zashid himself, he was unwell and unable to come greet them, the implication being that they hoped Rosie would take the hint and leave. However, due to Rossi's status, they couldn't directly drive her away. Rosie pretended to be naive and acted as if she didn't understand the hidden meaning. Helpless, the butler had no choice but to invite them inside. Just as they reached the door of the meeting room, they heard a woman arguing inside. "You actually chose Rosie Nate? What on earth are you all thinking?" Everyone except Rosie was momentarily stunned. Ignoring attempts to stop her, Rosie pushed the door open and walked in. "Hello, everyone. I'm Rosie Nate. Although I didn't mean to eavesdrop, I'm already young Master Zashid's fiancée now, right?" Looking at the girl who had suddenly barged in, Elizabeth slammed the table in anger. "How much money did you take from Count Nate to choose this girl as the fiancée?" A smile curved at the corner of Rossi's lips. "Of course, it's much more than what you offered." Elizabeth had intended to bribe the elders with money to select the fiancée she wanted, so Rosie simply offered a price 100 times higher. The elders naturally obediently followed Rossi's arrangements. On top of that, with the soaring price of magic crystals, Rosie had more money than she could ever spend. Elizabeth strode toward Rosie aggressively, but was stopped midway by Shulba. "Madam, may I ask why you still have the leisure to remain here? Take a look at this photograph. Do you recognize the person in it?" Elizabeth focused her gaze. In the photo, a man and woman were intimately leaning against each other, and that man was her husband. Elizabeth felt as if struck by lightning she'd been cheated on. It turned out that Shulba, following Rossi's instructions, had secretly investigated and finally seized their leverage. "You've been working so hard here to get money, only for your husband to take it and go on dates with someone else." Rossi's additional jab struck straight at the heart. Elizabeth found it hard to accept for a moment. She turned around in a daze and ran off. Idon silently noted down, 2:40 p.m. Rosie drove away, an extremely annoying woman. He couldn't help but sigh. Rossi's methods of using bribery and exposing affairs to deal with people were exactly the same as Yulian's in the past. Rosie proposed that she wanted to meet Zashid. The butler still tried to evade the request. "Everyone, from today onward I am Zashid's fiancée. I've heard that in emergencies, a fiancée is granted the same rights as immediate family members." Seeing Rossi's firm attitude, the butler had no choice but to lead them to Zashid's room. Following behind, Idon was also very curious. Yulian said this young master only looked good in photos and not so much in real life. Was that true? However, after just one glance, Idon rapidly wrote in his notebook, "Yulian, your hope has been shattered. Who on earth took his photo so badly? This guy is so handsome, it's impossible to look away." Having experienced the life and death parting of the previous life, Rosie finally stood once again before Zashid. Seeing the pain on his face as he desperately suppressed his magic power, Rossi's heart ached deeply. Since his parents passed away, Zashid had not only suffered betrayal from relatives and coercion from his aunt, but also had to guard the family's divine beast, Flame, to prevent it from being taken by the temple. This young boy had carried the entire family on his frail shoulders. Rosie gazed at him quietly. In their previous life, cold iron bars had always stood between them, but now she could finally stand before him without any barriers. "Zashid, I can finally see you clearly with my own eyes." Thinking back to their previous life, Rosie and Flame had both been treated as test subjects and imprisoned in the temple's dungeon. Over time, Rosie learned to communicate with Flame in simple ways. However, they only had 2 pieces of bread each day to fill their stomachs. Although both of them were starving, they would always give the bread to the other. Rosie looked at the full moon outside the window. Today was the day Zashid would come to visit her. Only once a month. Rosie had been looking forward to their meeting immensely. Yet this time, Zashid collapsed before her, covered in blood. He had brought her a sacred relic that could turn back time. He wanted Rosie to return to the past and live freely. "You can go see the sea, go to school, make many friends, and you must also save your brother." Looking at the dying Zashid, Rosie wept like rain. "What about you? What will you do?" Zashid forced a smile. "Don't deliberately come looking for me. When I was young, I trusted no one and was an arrogant brat covered in thorns. I will definitely come find you and figure out a way to save you. Even if you tell me not to, I'll still find a way to stay by your side." Zashid's smile gradually faded, and his voice grew softer and softer. "Then I'm afraid I'll only hurt your heart, because at that time, even if I liked you inside, I would pretend to be cold on the surface." Zashid's breathing became weaker and weaker. "Rosie, if you don't plan to properly discipline me, stay by my side, and marry me, then don't have anything to do with me. This is my selfish wish. As long as you can be happy, that's enough for me." These were the last words Zashid left for Rosie. They were also deeply etched into Rossi's heart, becoming her unwavering belief. "I will definitely come find you, no matter what it takes. I will save you." But the current Zashid did not recognize her. Although Rosie had expected this, she still couldn't help feeling a little disappointed. The butler introduced Rosie to Zashid. "This is Miss Rosie of the Count Nate's residence, and also your new fiancé." Zashid looked slightly surprised. He then showed a mocking smile. "Found someone around my age again? Changed strategies? Where is my aunt?" Rosie told Zashid not to worry anymore. "She won't come again. We've already handled everything properly." Zashid remained guarded. "So what? Is Count Nate going to control me in her place?" He was long used to being exploited by relatives and had no trust at all in this stranger, Rosie. He directly ordered her to leave and told her to get out quickly. He would soon send her the documents to dissolve the engagement. This caught Rosie off guard, and she still wanted to explain something. But Zashid turned his head away in disgust and told her to get out immediately. Rosie was momentarily speechless, then suddenly had an idea and changed her strategy. So those words were true after all, about not trusting anyone. Zashid immediately frowned. "Who said those words?" Rosie smiled and advised him, "If you're not feeling well, don't shout. If you keep yelling like this, your heart won't take it. You might as well just explode from anger." Zashid was briefly at a loss for words. "Are you worried about me?" Idan, standing nearby, silently recorded, as expected of Rosie, using the gentlest tone to break through the opponent's defenses within 5 minutes. However, Zashid still felt full of aversion toward Rosie. He ordered her to leave immediately, and his voice startled the divine beast Flame resting nearby. Flame lifted its head and carefully examined Rosie, then suddenly dashed toward her. This sudden situation caught Zashid off guard, and he tried to stop it, but it was already too late. To his surprise, the next second, Flame rubbed against Rosie, acting spoiled and asking to be held, affectionate, as if they were old friends reunited after a long time apart. Flame barked twice. Rosie understood it was actually saying long time no see. She had used the sacred relic to turn back time and traveled back to the present. Both her most important brother and Zashid had forgotten her. Only Flame still remembered her. Was it because Flame was a divine beast? Was it unaffected by the power of the sacred relic? Rosie held Flame tightly as tears streamed from her eyes. "Thank you. Thank you for still remembering me." In their previous life, when she was imprisoned in the dungeon, Rosie had cried countless times, and Zashid would always comfort her through the iron bars. "Rosie, if you want to cry, then cry only in front of me. If you shed tears alone, my heart will truly ache." But now, the Zashid standing before her was completely unfamiliar with her. Rosie felt a sharp pang in her heart. Now, there were no iron bars between them, yet he would never come to comfort her again. They once shared countless memories together, but now they had all become memories belonging only to Rosie alone. Watching the scene, Idan quickly recorded, "Daphne's wolf keeps clinging to Rosie. It seems it likes cute things too." Zashid kept calling the wolf back, but it didn't even give him a glance. Idan suddenly came up with a bold guess. Could this wolf originally belong to Rosie? Or perhaps Rossie's father was once a member of the Daphne family. Even Zashid couldn't help asking, "You're not of the Daphne bloodline, are you?" But Flame made an X with its paw, clearly indicating no. Zashid grew even more confused. He had never seen Flame be this close to anyone other than himself. He asked Rosie what exactly she had done. Rosie didn't know how to answer. She told Zashid that there would be no more replacing fiancés in the future, because your body will recover soon. I commissioned the magic tower to produce a sedative that can suppress the magical power rampaging inside you. Originally, when the news about the Lam stone mine was announced, the price of magic crystals would plummet. The magic tower would also go bankrupt due to financial difficulties, and the temple would take the opportunity to acquire it. As a result, the production of the sedative would cease. But this time, Rosie acted in advance and invested a huge sum of money into the magic tower. She successfully saved the magic tower from the brink of bankruptcy as the price of magic crystals rebounded. The magic tower's financial problems were completely resolved. Rosie also invested all the remaining funds to ensure that the sedative could continue to be produced. The sedative will be delivered soon. Once your body recovers, you'll be able to personally take charge of the family, Rosie said excitedly. Zashid felt somewhat awkward. Since the magic tower has resumed production, I can buy it myself. There's no need for the Nate family to interfere. But I placed an enormous order, so they won't take any other orders for a while. Just accept it with peace of mind. Your big sister has plenty of money. Zashid was puzzled. Why are you going this far? Because I want to be engaged to you, and I don't want to dissolve the engagement. Zashid frowned. Is that all? What's the point of you doing this? My recovery won't be a good thing for your Nate family. My recovery won't be a good thing for your Nate family. You'll lose the reason to meddle in the affairs of the Daphne family. However, to Rosie, none of that mattered. The high priest of the temple aimed to gather all the divine beasts of the 4 great ducal families. In order to take Flame away, the temple would continuously torment Zashid. Rosie had to stay by his side. More importantly, in her previous life, she had worried that she was a burden, that she would become a weight on Zashid. So Rosie had always buried her feelings deep in her heart. But now, she finally had a reason to say those words out loud. Because I like you, Zashid. I truly like you. Although the current you is a bit hopeless, but with some proper discipline, you'd still make a pretty good marriage partner. Zashid's face instantly flushed bright red.
What are you talking about?
All this liking and not liking, do you think I would believe that? Rosie teased him with a smile. I'm the one confessing, so why are you the one getting shy? There's nothing strange about liking someone. You're the one who made things awkward, okay? Idon watched with great interest from the side. The way the little brat spoke so solemnly about liking someone was just too funny. What did they even understand? At the very least, you'd have to be as old as me to be qualified to talk about love. Rosie suggested waiting another 15 years. If after 15 years Zashid still disliked her, then she would accept breaking off the engagement. Zashid disagreed. 15 years is too long. By then we'll definitely be forced to marry, absolutely not. Rosie had no choice but to compromise. Then let's wait until we're adults. If by adulthood you still don't like me, we'll dissolve the engagement. In truth, Rosie had a selfish motive. Before, she had worked hard and managed to make her amnesiac brother accept her again. She believed that as long as she tried harder, Zashid would definitely come to like her again. Although from beginning to end, Zashid thought the proposal was ridiculous. But if this was the price for Rosie providing tranquilizers, then he had no reason to refuse. Anyway, the engagement would be dissolved in the end. Maintaining it until adulthood meant he had nothing to lose. Rosie was somewhat surprised. She hadn't expected Zashid to actually agree. But Zashid still told Rosie not to get her hopes up. There's no way I'll ever like you. Idon recorded this scene in real time and added a snarky comment. Zashid's ears were obviously red, yet he was still loudly denying it. So hilarious. He casually sketched a future scene of Zashid crying and begging Rosie not to abandon him. Rossie's heart was practically bursting with joy. The tranquilizers would take a few more days to arrive, and there was no one in the ducal residence whom Zashid could trust. Fortunately, Rosie had already made arrangements. She recommended Shulba to Zashid as his adjutant. He'll help you replace everyone in the ducal residence with trustworthy people, and he'll guide you on how to manage the current chaos there. Zashid wanted to refuse, but Rosie patiently persuaded him. You're only 11 after all. You need a reliable adult to protect and guide you. Once you get the tranquilizers, you can fire him or do whatever you want at any time. But Shulba is very confident. Getting fired is absolutely impossible. Naturally, if you even fire someone as capable as Shulba, then there's really no hope. Rosie handed the flower in her hand to Shulba. Congratulations on finding a new job. I hope you like the position I recommended. Finally having work to keep him busy, Shulba was very satisfied. Thank you, Miss Rosie. A family with lots of trouble and unreliability like this perfectly suits my tastes. Idon hadn't realized that when Rosie asked Shulba to pick the prettiest flower earlier, this was what she meant. Just now, Zashid had still been wearing an expression that said, "If you dare give me a flower, I'll throw it away." Thinking about it now, it was truly hilarious. The package Rosie had prepared arrived. She stroked Flame's head and said goodbye to it. See you again. You'll never be separated from Zashid anymore. Flame was a little reluctant, but still barked twice to thank Rosie. Rosie was deeply moved. Only you understand me. You understand that I'm working hard to change the future. Zashid looked indifferent. I never planned to send Flame to the temple anyway. Flame suddenly turned and barked at Zashid. You're such a buzzkill. He's young. Let's forgive him. Rosie instructed Flame to guard Zashid well. She knew that no matter how much Flame liked her, in the end it would still want to stay by Zashid's side, because in her previous life, Flame had waited for Zashid in the dungeon all along. Suddenly Flame kept barking at Rosie. Marry, marry. It even ran to Zashid's side and pawed at him. Hurry up and marry this guy on the spot. Rosie was stunned. Why is Flame suddenly so impatient? Zashid looked confused, because even though he was the master, he couldn't understand a word Flame was saying. But Rosie could understand. This made Zashid suspicious. Your engagement application said you were just a temple trainee, yet you can communicate with a divine beast, and your holy power is this strong. You're not some high-ranking priest, are you? Seeing Zashid's guesses becoming more and more outrageous, he was even starting to suspect she was a spy sent by the temple. Rosie hurriedly explained, I really am just an ordinary trainee, and my holy power is very weak. To prove herself, she stepped forward and grabbed Zashid's hand, letting him personally feel that faint trace of holy power. Looking at the dim glow, Zashid finally believed Rossie's words. At the same time, Rosie felt a little regretful. If only my holy power were a bit stronger, then I wouldn't have to rely on tranquilizers and could ease your pain myself. Only then did Zashid suddenly realize and try to pull his hand away. Why are you still holding my hand? Unexpectedly, the next second, a ring was already slipped onto his ring finger. Rosie smiled and raised her own matching ring for him to see. This is our engagement ring. I specially had it custom made at the magic tower. So stop staring at Shulba's flower. The ring is much more expensive than the flower. Rosie looked directly into Zashid's eyes and said solemnly, Zashid, I'm truly grateful to you. Grateful that you kept holding on until I came to find you. You've worked hard during this time. Get a good rest today. Watching the scene, Flame barked even more excitedly. Meanwhile, Idon looked displeased and quickly wrote down, Rosie held Zashid's hand, so we should cut his hand off, but I'm too timid to do it, so Yulian, you'd better do it yourself. Suddenly, A hand reached over and snatched away the notebook. It was Shulba. For the safety of my new master, I've decided to destroy this. You switched sides way too fast, didn't you? Can't be helped. A working man doesn't have a choice. Zashid's matter has finally come to a temporary end. Rosie pulled Idon along, preparing to leave, but before going home, they had one more place to visit. This was also the reason she agreed to let Idon come with her. She was taking Idon to the magic tower, hoping he could become a grand mage as soon as possible. After Rosie left, Shulba immediately threw himself into work as the deputy. But Zashid's attitude remained as cold as ice. I don't trust you. He had suffered too many betrayals and endured too much harm. He was no longer capable of trusting anyone. Very good. Not trusting others easily. That's the attitude someone in power should have. Seeing that Shulba remained calm, Zashid spoke bluntly. I don't believe what that woman said either. She must have ulterior motives. Perhaps the temple is the real mastermind. After all, the Daphner family has something they want. No matter what Zashid said, Shulba wore an expression that seemed to say, I understand, I get it. Zashid grew even angrier.
So, I don't trust you either.
As soon as those words were spoken, Shulba's expression finally changed. He covered his mouth, trying to suppress his excitement. This is wonderful. Truly wonderful. My former superior always trusted me unconditionally because of our past relationship, which led people to think I only rose through favoritism. But here, I can finally earn recognition through my own ability. Shulba told Zashid to rest well while he continued handling the work. As soon as Shulba left, Zashid collapsed weakly against the flames. If what she said is true, once the sedative arrives, my suffering will finally end. He let out a self-mocking laugh. Compared to selling you to the temple, wouldn't it be more worthwhile to sell myself in exchange for the sedative? Everyone who tried to approach him appeared friendly on the surface, but in the end, they all revealed their sinful, true faces. Yet Zashid vaguely felt that Rosie was a little different. She seemed to understand his thoughts. Even so, Zashid kept warning himself. He must not fall for it again. Rosie approached him for the benefit of the Nate family. He could not trust her, but as his consciousness gradually blurred, Zashid felt the pain inside his body temporarily suppressed. Though he had personally confirmed that Rossi's holy power was weak, he felt unprecedented ease. Having hardly ever slept properly, he was instantly swallowed by drowsiness. At last, he could sleep well, all because of a small action by Idon. The usually calm and composed Rosie suddenly broke down, crying and begging Idon to let her go. It turned out that just moments ago, having settled one of her worries, Rosie had fallen asleep in the carriage from exhaustion. Idon gazed at the girl's peaceful sleeping face and fell into deep thought. He had always known that Yulian had a younger sister treasured in the palm of his hand, but he had not expected her to be so special. Usually innocent and lively, like a well-behaved girl untouched by the world. Yet once faced with danger, she became exceptionally shrewd. After all, only by being that way could she live safely in the Nate family. After these past few days together, Idon had come to a conclusion. Never provoke Rosie, or you would die miserably. Ever since Rosie had stepped forward to shield him, a strange feeling had grown within him. He envied her for having Yulian's unconditional affection, and envied her for learning how to love others because of it. Idon, on the other hand, had never received anyone's care since birth. The belittlement from elders and bullying from his cousin had left him trapped in a swamp of inferiority. Though Rossi's birth status was inferior to his, she was still so lively and confident. As Idon looked at Rosie, his eyes were filled with admiration and envy. Sunlight streamed directly through the carriage window onto Rossi's face. Afraid of disturbing her rest, Idon quickly drew the curtain to block the sunlight. But the next second, Rosie jolted awake. Her face instantly turned pale, her eyes filled with fear and panic. I don't want to be locked up. Please don't. Idon was stunned by her reaction. What's wrong with you? Rosie lost control, pounding on the carriage window and crying out, let me out. I hate dark places. Idon tried to calm her, but she shoved him to the ground. Rosie clutched her head in pain, fear like an invisible hand tightly gripping her heart. I don't want to be locked up again. I was wrong. Please let me go. Her hands clawed wildly, even tearing off a small piece of the curtain. Sunlight shone through the gap, and only then did Rosie gradually calm down. Hearing the commotion, the coachman hurriedly stopped the carriage. He knocked and asked to come in to check. Seeing the plea in Rossi's eyes, Idon immediately reacted and stopped the coachman, explaining that Rosie had just had a nightmare and was frightened. After Rosie completely calmed down, Idon cautiously asked the reason. Was it because I drew the curtain? Are you afraid of the dark? Rosie explained that she wasn't afraid of the dark, but of being in small, enclosed spaces, which always triggered an instinctive urge to escape. Under Idon's repeated questioning, Rosie finally revealed a secret. She had once been imprisoned by the temple in a small, dark room for experiments. Idon could hardly believe it. The temple that preached compassion and love to the world had been doing such things in secret. He had thought the temple was merely corrupt. He never imagined it could be so utterly inhumane. Can't you report it to the royal family? The temple holds the greatest power now. Who can control them? Rosie urged Idon to keep it secret and not let Yulian know. Idan did not understand. My brother can't do anything right now because of his amnesia. I don't want him to worry about me anymore. After thinking for a while, Idan reluctantly agreed to keep it secret for the time being. They would tell Yulian after he regained his memory. Seeing the smile return to the girl's lips, Idan felt a surge of complicated emotions. So the seemingly fearless Rosie was still so fragile and helpless when faced with fear. Idan wanted to say more, but the carriage suddenly stopped. My lords, we've arrived at the magic tower. The two of them looked out the window. A tall building stood there majestically. Rosie and Idan had just arrived at the magic tower, yet they were unexpectedly greeted in person by the tower master, who appeared exceptionally delighted. Rosie felt somewhat flattered. The Count Nate's estate helped us get through the crisis. This is also what I ought to do, and most of us magicians are socially anxious and rather shy. We spend all day hiding in laboratories doing research. Some people didn't even know that the magic tower was almost acquired by the temple. Hearing this, Rosie smiled knowingly. With Idan's personality, the magic tower was indeed very suitable for him. The tower master looked at Rosie with eyes full of gratitude. If the Count Nate's estate had not stepped in to help in time, this magic tower, which embodied the painstaking efforts of countless magicians, would have long since changed hands. At this moment, Rosie asked about the progress of producing the sedative. Please rest assured, we are stepping up production according to your requirements. It will be sent to the Duke of Daphne's estate as soon as possible. After chatting for a while, the tower master finally could not hold back and made a request to Rosie. May I pinch your adorable cheeks? Of course you may. Thus, the tower master finally fulfilled her wish, pinching Rosie's machi like soft cheeks again and again. You are truly too adorable. While the tower master was in high spirits, Rosie took the opportunity to make a request. Could you see whether my cousin has magical talent? As soon as she said this, Idan was stunned. How could I possibly have talent? Rosie was puzzled. Don't you love reading magic books? Maybe your talent is very high. Interest and talent are two different things. Rosie knew very well why Idan was so resistant. Although he immersed himself in magic books every day, he could not even cast the simplest spell. It was not until he entered the magic tower at the age of 15 that his astonishing magical talent emerged. Rosie persuaded him to give it a try. If you start practicing now, perhaps you'll become a powerful magician in the future. She looked at the unconfident boy before her, as if she were seeing her former self, the girl who always hid in the corner and believed that ordinariness was her destiny. So when Yulian lost his memory, Rosie instinctively chose to flee. But given another life, she finally understood. No one is destined to be insignificant as long as one bravely pursues. One will eventually obtain one's own light. Come and try it. Don't let yourself regret it. Under Rossi's persuasion, Idan was moved, but he still had some concerns. I'm a clumsy fool who can only read magic books. If the tower master finds out I can't even perform the simplest spell, what should I do? Rosie held Idan's hand. Then we'll go home. In the future, we'll have breakfast together and go out together when you read. All right, and then we'll wait together for Yulian to finish studying and have dinner. Even if the result is not ideal, we will still have many happy and warm days ahead of us. So don't be afraid. Go and try. Idan finally let go of his inner worries and agreed to accept the Tower Master's test. Rosie could almost foresee the Tower Master's delighted expression for the boy before her would in the future become the Empire's most outstanding Grand Magician. Yet the Tower Master's expression showed some confusion. Normally, the magic power and holy power within the human body remain balanced and offset each other. But within Idan, she could not perceive the existence of any magic at all. This result left both Rosie and Idan stunned. Rosie found it hard to believe. That's impossible. The most powerful Grand Magician of the future. How could he possibly have no magic at all? Idan lowered his eyes and let out a bitter laugh. So it's just as I thought. No wonder father gave up on me long ago. I really am a useless good-for-nothing. Rosie fell into deep thought. In her previous life, Idan had indeed become a Grand Magician. Could it be that because of her transmigration, the trajectory of this life had shifted? Idan felt somewhat embarrassed. Yulian might have lost his memory now, but once he recovered, he would still be the most outstanding heir, and Zashid had also become the steward of the Duke of Daphne's estate. It seems that I'm the only useless one by Rossi's side. What nonsense are you talking about? Rosie angrily kicked his calf. You are you. There's no need to compare yourself with others. Now come home with me. Although she said so, Rosie still hoped in her heart that Idan could become a magician and fight the temple alongside her. But even if he could not, Idan would always be her important cousin, just as Yulian had brought her back from the temple to the Count's estate back then, not because he expected anything in return. This time, when she brought Idan to the magic tower, what she truly wanted was simply to see him regain his smile and find a reason to live. Rosie raised a smile at Idan. I've always felt rather lonely, so cousin, please have meals with me every day. It was just an offhand remark, yet it made Idan's eyes redden. All along, he had been suppressed and denied by his father and relatives, and only in front of Rosie could he feel a moment of warmth. Sorry to interrupt you both. The Tower Master suddenly spoke. There is something I must clarify. Idon does not lack magic power. It is just that the circulation of his magical pathways is obstructed, as if something has completely blocked them. Under normal circumstances like this, many people do not live past the age of 3. The Tower Master suggested that Idon stay at the magic tower for a few days. There was much pure energy here beneficial to magic, and perhaps they could determine the cause of his magical blockage. After all, she was also very curious about Idon's condition. Seeing that there was a turn for the better, Rosie happily persuaded Idon to stay, but Idon was not as excited. "I'm sorry, I think I'd better return to the Count's estate." As soon as he said this, Rosie was stunned. The Tower Master also did not understand. "Why? Don't you like magic? The conditions at our magic tower are in no way inferior to the Count's estate. Each floor here is as large as a village. Every magician who comes here is reluctant to leave. That's not the reason." Idon looked at Rosie with gentle eyes. "I promised Rosie that I would have meals with her every day, so I can't stay at the magic tower." Rosie burst into laughter. Having meals with an ordinary cousin is certainly pleasant, but dining with a grand magician cousin would surely be even better. After Rossie's repeated persuasion, Idon finally agreed to remain at the magic tower. Rosie sat alone in the carriage on the way back. There had been 3 of them when they left, but now only she remained. She recalled what Idon had said at parting. "If I can help you, I'm willing to stay at the magic tower. Perhaps in the future I can use magic to resolve your fear of dark and confined places." At last, Idon asked Rosie, "Do you have any expectations for the magician I will become in the future? I hope you can return to the Count Nate's estate. Even if you achieve great fame in the future, please do not abandon your surname. You will always be my cousin." In her previous life, Idon had been utterly disappointed in the family. When the family fell, he had cast aside his surname without hesitation. But at this moment, he looked serious. What fool would abandon his own surname? That is the Count Nate's estate. The contrast left Rosie in a daze. What kind of despair had he experienced to be so resolute in his previous life? As soon as Rosie got off the carriage, Heidi hurried over to greet her. "Miss, you've returned." Rosie said she wanted to see Julian, but Heidi advised her to return to her room and rest, as the situation in the estate was somewhat chaotic. Rosie sensed that something was wrong, and quickly asked Heidi what had happened. Heidi hesitated. "A pregnant woman has come to the door, claiming that she is carrying young Master Julian's child." Zashid fell into a bizarre dream. In the dream, he was teaching a girl to write through the bars of a cage, yet he could not see her face clearly. Seeing the floor covered with childish handwriting, Zashid was very surprised. "How did you write so much with a stone? Where's the pen I gave you?" The girl held her swollen fingers. "I used up that pen in 3 days. If I don't practice like this, I'll forget everything very quickly." Seeing the girl's hands abraded by the stone, Zashid felt heartbroken. Instead, the girl smiled. "My brother used to be like this too. As long as I got even a little hurt, he would worry a lot. He looked exactly like you do now." The dream gradually faded, and Zashid slowly woke up. Who is this girl? Why did his heart ache so much? At that moment, he suddenly sensed something. He abruptly sat up. The magic power that had been rampaging within his body had actually calmed down. He had not felt such ease and comfort for a long time. Could it be that yesterday, when Rosie tried to prove that her holy power was weak, her inadvertent touch produced this effect? At that moment, Shilba walked in carrying a large stack of documents, urging Zashid to deal with them quickly. "Why are you in such a hurry? There are too many affairs in this estate. Nothing is unimportant." Zashid slowly stood up and proposed going immediately to the Count Nate's estate to see Rosie. He needed to confirm something. Shilba's eyes lit up. "I understand. After all, Rosie is so adorable. Who wouldn't want to see her the moment they open their eyes?" "That's not what you think." Shilba suggested that he dress up a bit and change into something more formal. After all, it would be his first visit to his fiancée's home. But Zashid was completely unconcerned. "The engagement will be annulled sooner or later anyway. Once I confirm what I need to, I'll come right back."